first step of any model railroad typically begins with a ready-to-run train set. A ready-to-run set typically consists of a moderate amount of track adequate for a basic carpet layout. Along with that, you need a conventional power source. In my case, I have the Lionel CW80 transformer. Our Lionel ready-to-run set will be running on the Lionel Fast Track system, which is easy to use, simple to assemble, and disassemble. To put track together, simply line up the 3 rails correctly and push the pieces together. You can even flip the track over to watch the necessary parts snap together to ensure the connection is complete and that you will have good electrical contact. It's the same procedure for every fast track piece of track, whether it be straights, curves, switches, etc. It's just that simple. And your layout is almost fully assembled, but first we've got to sort out the power situation. There is one piece of straight track in your layout which is the designated terminal or power track. The wire tabs can be plugged into the bottom of the track and threaded out the side in a conveniently placed hole. After that, loosen the track power screws on the back of the CW80 transformer. The right column of screws is for powering accessories. The next part is simple. Take the red wire from the power track piece and insert it into the red screw and tighten it until it's secure, and then do the same with the black wire as well. If your set's wires don't have these metal connectors and are simply exposed wires at the ends, it's the same principle. Simply wrap the bare wire around the right colored screws and tighten them down to ensure good electrical contact. Huzzah! The carpet layout is now fully assembled and ready to receive power. Simply plug your CW80 controller into a power socket. The green light indicates we have power, which means we can move on to the fun part, the train itself. This set is a fairly typical classic Lionel O-scale ready-to-run diesel freight train set, which means this train has several classic pieces of rolling stock. A Union Pacific caboose, you don't see these on the rails in real life much anymore, if at all, save for a few museums. Here we've got a crane car, but on some sets you could have things like spotlight cars or ones with animated elements. Up next is a decent looking gondola with a few tanks for cargo. Pretty authentic for a ready-to-run set in my opinion. Model trains have come a long way in the last 100 years, and now is a good time as any to get into the hobby. We've also got a bold orange Western Pacific boxcar, a nice addition to any mixed freight train. And finally, the locomotive, a Union Pacific GP38, a historic engine from the 1960s and 70s. This engine has a great amount of detail and a surprising number of features for a starter set. Getting your train on the track is very simple. Use your eyes and hands to line up the wheels with the rails, and to ensure you've done it properly, use your hand to slide the car or engine back and forth, and if it rolls smoothly, you're all set. Now you've got to connect your train together. This process can be as simple as 2 steps. First, look for a tab on the coupler of either of the train pieces you want to connect, and gently press down on it. Next, simply push the pieces together and the couplers will close and lock into place. You do this for every piece of the train set. And remember, everything I tell you can be applied to pretty much any train set, even the steam sets. The only thing they will likely have over a diesel set is a smoke machine, which we can discuss in a later part of the series. Now we should finally be ready to give the track some power and get this train moving. Uh-oh, there seems to be an electrical problem as indicated by the flashing light. I'll be right back after a quick look over the train and the track to make sure all the connections are good. Aha! I found the culprits. A couple derailed cars. It is good to know that if the train is ever derailed, the system will cut power to protect itself and you. And now the train is running. I'll admit my train needed a push to get going after being dormant for 12 years. But it can now start and stop under its own power, and it is working brilliantly. You can hear the engine's horn being activated by connection problems in the old track pieces, but you can actually activate the whistle or horn yourself at the press of a button. That button is in the middle of your CW80 controller. And I didn't expect the GP38 to have this feature, but the bell button on the right activates the realistic bell. Both diesel and steam locomotives can have bells, but only diesels have horns, and only steam trains have the historic whistles you'd expect them to have. Conventionally controlled engines, or any Lionel engine for that matter, is going to have switches that control various features somewhere on their bodies. This engine has a control switch for the horn and the directional alternating system. Some diesels and most steam locomotives also have switches for turning their smoke machines on and off. This engine doesn't have a smoke machine though. Anyways, I have just switched the directional switch to the on position, which will now allow me to change the modes of the locomotive between forward, neutral, reverse, neutral, forward, and so on in an infinite loop. The way changing direction works is very simple. Basically, whenever track power is lost and the engine shuts down, the next time you power up the engine, it will be in the next mode of the cycle. There's neutral. There's forward. Neutral again. And now reverse. Easy. Another way to change direction is by pressing the direction button on the left of your CW80. By pressing the button, it will briefly cut track power for a moment to make for a seamless change in direction. For a few $100s at most, this is a very detailed and satisfying way to have fun for such a large demographic. I got my first train set back in 2003 when I was 5 years old. That too was also a diesel GP38 set. You must admit, the sounds are great for such an inexpensive set. Alright everyone, we're cutting all track power because it's time to add some more track. When you've become no longer satisfied with your current layout, you'll want to expand it with more track pieces. You can get extra straight and curve sections as you probably expected. But the highlight of this expansion pack are the switch pieces. We will be operating them by hand, not with any special remotes or controls, which makes them very accessible to beginners. Switches are great for changing the directions of trains, making use of side tracks, and are simply great additions for layouts growing in complexity. You can attach straights and curve sections to them, pretty much whatever you want. Your imagination is the limit. Let's get this expansion underway. One important thing to remember is to always check the connections between all track pieces after making any changes to the layout, as some connections may have come loose during modification. Any issues should be remedied before attempting to power the track and trains. And here we are. Not only does the layout now boast a side track thanks to our switches, but now each side is a little longer and wider thanks to the addition of extra straight sections. Let's power up the layout and test out our expansion. So far everything is working. Power is reaching the locomotive just fine, and there doesn't seem to be any connectivity issues. If there were, the green power light would be flashing. Let's throw the switch to make the train travel on the inner track. This is excellent. The track, train, and switches are all working perfectly. And remember, in the grand scheme of things, as a layout, this is very simple. We may have added a handful of track pieces, even some interesting ones like the switches. But we still don't have any accessories, no grade crossings, no stations, no diamond cross sections. We haven't even made the train itself any more complex. Oh yes, that's right, the train itself can get longer and more advanced. There are locomotives that can be controlled with remotes. You can have multiple engines lashed up together on one train. You can have extra pieces of rolling stock for the locomotives to pull. There are many possibilities. And when the day of running trains is over, if your layout isn't in a place where it can stay overnight on its own dedicated floor space or table, disassembling the layout is very easy. The fast track sections are very easy to pull apart and store for later use. And there you have it. That's the demonstration of how great Lionel ready-to-run train sets are. So, if you were wondering where to get started, look no further. It's as simple as plug and play, even easier to figure out than Lego, and has great value given how affordable it is. Enjoy building an empire in your living room, happy railroading, and get ready to say all aboard.